Thank you guys so much for joining me today on Dynamo BIM. Super excited today. I actually would call these people my friends, have conversations with them offline without being recorded, really rely on them for all kinds of random things. We talk more than BIM. We're just having weird conversations even prior to this chat. So happy to have them on Dynamo BIM today. We have Alex, Christina, and Megan. I'll let them introduce themselves and give an introduction, about what they do, where they're from, what their background is, etc. But really, we're all in the BIM management side of things. We all have an architectural background and have all migrated towards BIM management in some capacity. So I'll go ahead and start in my kind of Rubik's Cube of order with Christina.
Hey,
How's it
Christina
going,
Holden
Christina?
here. Hi. I am the Director of Design Technology at Hastings Architecture in Nashville, Tennessee. And I think that, out of the three of you guys, out of the four of us total, my firm's probably the smallest. We have about 85 people in our office, and we are one office. We do architecture, interior design, urban planning. And my background specifically is architecture. I was a project architect for years, and then I've been doing BIM specifically for the last, I think it's almost 7 years. But I started, down the technology path in about 2008. So
You're kind of forced to, right? Like with the recession and all of that. Like if you wanted a job, you had to be good at technology, right? Like it was kind of like
yeah,
the way things were, which
yeah.
it was lucky for people like us that we're naturally kind of gravitating towards it anyway. And so
Yeah, we were going through CAD transition in 2008, and I was on the first team to use Revit, so it was great fun.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super excited about our combo.
Thanks for having me, Dana.
Next up, Megan.
Ah, hello everybody. I'm Megan Brooks. I am the leader of design technology for Dialogue. We are a multidiscipline firm, about a medium-sized firm, I think. That's what's classified as medium-sized. We have 5 offices in Canada and the States, all the way from Toronto to San Francisco. And I'm kind of in the middle where I'm based out of cold Edmonton, Alberta right now. And I say cold because it's about minus 30 here. So minus 30 Celsius for all you Fahrenheit people. I got into the technology realm wholeheartedly, I would say about 3.5 years ago. I was the BIM manager at my previous company alongside some project work. So you didn't really fully commit to the BIM management side of things because billable hours seem to be always supersede some of the overhead costs. Our firm is very keen on improving our processes. So anything that has to do with BIM throughout the project lifecycle, that's kind of what I'm the most interested in, is the translation of data through that component of it. And I'm just excited to see what we have a conversation about today. This is a great group of people. We usually can talk for hours on this stuff, so we'll tame it to an hour.
Yeah, usually we chat offline without being recorded, and sometimes it goes like 2+ hours, just
Yeah.
like us shooting the shit, like not even necessarily about them, right? Like, which is just great. And hey, Alex, crazy life changes for you lately. I'm so happy you're able to join us.
Yeah. So since the last time I was on Dynamo BIM, I relocated to Australia. So I started a new job with Woods Bagot, which I started on Tuesday. So, first week there. And I've relocated back to Melbourne, Australia, which is why it's sunny and 25 Celsius and 70 Fahrenheit here. It's the middle of summer, which is pretty nice.
On the other side of the
That's
spectrum, right? Complete. It's nighttime. It's daytime. It's warm. It's sunny.
exactly. Yeah, everything's upside down over there, which is so. So I just started with Woods Bagot as the design technology lead for the Melbourne studio. So Woods Bagot has, I think, 15 studios around the world. Melbourne is one of the biggest ones. And so my kind of role there is to promote use of design technology, upskill the teams, and also interface with Group, which is the kind of global technology and standards and content group. So I'm just kind of starting that, just going through the orientation. So in terms of the topic today, I'm pretty fresh, especially on the Woods Bagot side of how that kind of talent acquisition and testing goes.
I'm super excited to see what your role has in store for you. I'm sure you are as well.
Totally.
I'm sure you're going to bring awesome things to it, and they're super lucky to have you if they're listening. Good catch with Alex.
Thanks.
Well, I will say that we are a fun group, the BIM people. And always great to harness these types of not only conversations, but just relationships. So I am so grateful to have crossed paths and to continue crossing paths with you guys. So maybe let's get started talking a little bit about how you guys each maybe approach BIM just internally, individually, right? I mean, obviously we work for firms that have BIM and their own kind of philosophy tied to BIM and how they approach BIM for documentation and all of that, right? But talk a little bit about where you see BIM in kind of your realm of the world, right? What you're passionate about, right? Obviously, everybody knows I'm really super passionate about data and Dynamo, right? But then also maybe where you see BIM going, not even necessarily like 20 years, but next year, 2 years, 3 years. Anybody have any like major thoughts on that?
Megan, I feel like you should kick us off.
I should take this one. I think we're gonna like be more data driven, which is exactly what you talked about. I think actually using our models and closing that feedback loop to help us make more informed design decisions. Do I think it'll happen in 2 years where we can get that information? No, but I think we can start implementing systems within our BIM modeling methods that we can actually start deriving some of that from. So it's going to take us years to get some of that data back from the actual infrastructure that we've used to inform those design decisions. That's something that I'm passionate about, and what we're trying to integrate more into our workflows, even working with owners, working with general contractors on how do we utilize our BIM models for that full life cycle for the actual project itself. I mean, we're all in design firms. So that takes a small scope of work for the actual project lifecycle. So if we can actually utilize our BIM models more effectively, then I think we're going to create just a more sustainable environment. That's my passion. I could talk about that for a while. But I mean, also just like improving our simple modeling methods right now and having more interactions with our general contractors or owners, and the storytelling aspect, the visualizations, being able to walk them through a building before it's even built so that they understand the design intent. That's another one that we think is huge right now. Not everybody thinks in 3D, and some people don't understand what's on 2D documentation that will translate into the real life. So that's what I would say.
Well, and Christina, I feel like you have an interesting, like you were saying, just being at one of the smaller firms. And I know being at not as small as that, but at my previous firm was less than 200 people. And sometimes it can feel like you're the one person on an island that is the single person as a resource, right? Like it can be really daunting. Like everybody comes to you for the answers. You must be the knowledge, the knowledge holder, the source of truth, right?
Yeah, I would say, since we've been in Revit for a long time, I have a really awesome, passionate group of super users in my office. And although their titles are not, they aren't BIM coordinators or BIM managers, these are folks who have been in Revit for the past 6-7 years, and they know their way around things. And so I rely on a lot of my BIM leads on teams to help their team members. And I think for us, the biggest thing was having the buy-in from upper management to get started in Revit when we did back in 2008. And I think we were fully transitioned by 2012. At that time, I think we were only 40 people. And so starting in 2012, every project that came out of our office was in Revit, and now we're adding Rhino and other types of analysis to that. So I think for us, where we see that going is just kind of expanding our toolkit a little bit. You know, we look at BIM as a tool to help us design. I think maybe, I don't know, I'd be interested to hear from Megan and Alex, from you guys, about what your owners are looking for as far as data. I think in the US, maybe the data train has not left the station yet. I think that we all see that that's coming, but I'd be interested, I guess, to know more about what you guys are seeing in your countries.
I don't know if Alex has anything on that, but I don't think owners right now know what they want to ask for. So we're currently
kind
in
of
this
similar to North to America in
Yeah.
Canada, right? Like we're probably in the same North American boat.
Yeah, they're kind of in a flux where they know they need to ask for the data. So they ask for the world when really we just need to give them Canada for them to be able to utilize that information. So they ask for data in the sense that they know they have to utilize it, but they don't know what exactly they're asking for. That's what we're noticing. So it's kind of a weird area for us where we're helping to inform those decisions, but we don't know how to inform them when we don't know how they're going to utilize the data. So it's kind of a roundabout way that we're working through that right now.
Yeah, I think that's totally the thing that's happening as well, is that, you know, now like everyone's talking about data and clients just ask for all of it, but like fundamentally, like the big change that I think that needs to happen is really on like the delivery side, because like facilities management is something that's pretty big, especially with kind of your big infrastructure projects. But you know, I was talking to one of the project managers, and he was showing me this really complicated brick facade that they modeled everything using Rhino and Dynamo before site came around. And he's like, and then at the end of the day, they printed out a sheet, and some guy with bricks just made it. You know, so there's still kind of like a gap between the full facilities management, Uniclass, Omniclass, all that, you know, cost data, you know, as builds, and then the actual building getting built. Like the whole digital twin thing is interesting, but fundamentally the construction industry, at least in the buildings that we're dealing with, they're still printing out sheets and printing on sheets. And I think, like, you know, things, softwares like Revisto are starting to, and even some of the new BIM 360 tools, although they're not quite as good in my opinion, are kind of making it so that markups are being done on the model and starting to utilize that model, but there's still kind of a small gap between the actual things that happen on site and, you know, these models that have so much data and information.
I literally had a conversation today with my BIM team about developing a process so that the team can work in color and all of the sheets, all the views are in color, but rather than printing in grayscale, which obviously mucks everything up and nothing looks right, turning on like a filter, like applying a filter to every view template that will show walls as black and white. You know, like trying to develop these methods because they're still printing, and you know, so it's so it's just like really this back and forth game of like, we try to push this idea of like eventually the model is going to be the deliverable, but we're having to create workflows to print in black and white. Automation workflows.
Yeah.
But workflows nonetheless, right? So yeah, rocking a hard place there.
Yeah.
I think we've been lucky to work with a lot of great contractors in Nashville doing local projects that are really putting a lot of effort into VDC. And I mean, we've had some recent projects where the set was over 1,000 sheets total, and like printing that is just thousands of dollars in itself. So, I mean, all of our contractors have gotten on board. I don't know that they even print anymore. Smaller projects, yes, you'll still see the sheets around, but I feel like we've at least moved to having iPads. We had a discussion the other day about doing more details in color, just so we can really
details in color.
Yeah. So, or like having objects present in color in our details so that it's very clear what's sheathing, what's waterproofing, and just making that a little easier to read. And if everybody's using PDFs, it makes it so much easier.
But to back up a little bit, and I think, Alex, you're in a really interesting space because you're in this transition. Can you talk a little bit about maybe what what your passions in terms of BIM are, and where you maybe see the future of BIM going.
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess like one of the interesting things, I mean, personally, in terms of like modeling, I'm always passionate about like really complicated facades and and automation and the ways you can increase like efficiencies in translation between different software. That's personally what I'm really interested in. But I think one thing that I'm starting to notice more, and also you notice it when Christina talks about her team, is that like part of like BIM management and I guess like our kind of roles is it's really about like the human aspect. I think part of the growth of BIM is really the growth of the studios and the places we work and the new blood that's coming in from universities and the skill sets that they have. Like CAD managers started to slow down because everyone got really good at CAD, and now Revit is older than it used to be, probably when we all started using it. And we're kind of getting this injection of new talent into the studios. And so part of it is about really fostering the relationships. And even like when we talk about the buildings that come out of our offices, it's really the teams. Like we kind of help drive them and help fix things and when they break and automate things. But part of it, I think, and it's something that I'm kind of trying to focus on now, is more about like the human relationships within the job itself. So Revit and BIM and the delivery side is all kind of, I think, it's very interesting and it's definitely a passion, but creating the good relationships within the teams and things like that, I think are almost as important as having the technical knowledge at a certain level, because you really need to kind of foster a good environment. You have to help upskill the people within the teams. Then you also have to be able to explain kind of workflows to both client groups who don't necessarily understand what BIM is in terms of the data management, and also project managers who are just kind of trying to hit deadlines and maybe don't understand the implications of decisions made further down the line. So that's kind of not particularly BIM related, but it's just kind of something that I'm seeing, especially now in a new job where I don't know as many people. That's something that I'm kind of trying to work on, so that so that I have a good relationship with these people that I'm just meeting. They feel like they can talk to me when something goes wrong, and also there's kind of a certain level of like BIM counseling, where it's just like sometimes they just need to talk to you about something and be reassured that everything is going to work out and be okay. It's like part of my job, I feel like, is just counseling people through difficult BIM problems rather than actually fixing them myself.
That was actually one of the things that I loved working at a smaller firm, is that this is kind of crazy, but I was close enough with the IT department that you couldn't get Revit installed on your computer unless you went through a 3-day training course with me. And I like provided lunch, like the whole thing. Like you weren't escaping the 3-day training class, right? It was like a way for me to build a relationship with you, to understand your level of knowledge, and to understand everybody else's course of education, right? Like you now know what your neighbor knows, and how they were taught and their approach. And we've now built a relationship where, you can come to me and ask me, hey, I have this super complicated facade. What would be the best way to build this with a curtain wall, customize a panel, whatever it might be. And I think those are really, really wonderful ways. And then also working with, some of the higher ed, not higher ed, but higher up staff to understand deadlines and staffing and, who's coming on, and having those relationships where it's, cyclical throughout the firm. Because the hardest thing I'm finding in a big firm is just sharing the information that exists. How do people know that the workflows are there, that they, you don't know what you don't know, right? I think that that's a huge challenge. With that being said, what do you guys, in terms of your firm's mentality, what are you guys seeing when you bring on staff? Are you hiring people that don't know Revit at all? I mean, is Revit like a prerequisite to your hiring, or are you just looking for good architects and good designers, good staff and you know, then you can train them and fill in the gaps, if you will. What is your approach to that? Megan, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, we have kind of a different approach recently, and that's purely due to what we're seeing as like a skilled labor shortage. We're just noticing that there isn't as many people who are very prevalent or have even used Revit, but they have the experience from the technical or building science background.
Well,
So if
especially
they're
like what Alex is saying is, you know, you come out of college and maybe you are super familiar with Rhino
Mhm.
or Z. What's the other great Form
Or-
Z? Or
oh yeah.
maybe that's too old at this point. But you know what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
those types of things where it's like I understand tech. I know Alex and I have had the Form Z conversation,
Mhm.
but you know, just understanding technology to a certain level. And it's like, okay, well, if you understand the basic principles of building a BIM,
Mhm.
right? And you know what goes into that, and all of the little pieces and parts and the elements and their properties and all of that. Maybe at your previous firm you used ArchiCAD,
Yes. Oh,
right?
that's exactly it. So, like even for us, we're noticing it's dependent on the role, and it's not a consistent make or break if they get the job. So we send out Revit assessments to our production users, but that's about
Upon hiring. Okay.
yeah, upon hiring. So like
Okay.
before we hire them in the hiring process, but we don't use it as a level of this is going to make or break whether or not you get the job. It's a level of what training are we going to provide if we do bring you on board. So we use kind of the skills gaps that they identify at the bottom to provide them with training paths, and hopefully they're not resourced as day one that they get in and they can actually work through some of that training. But then we work with the project managers, we'll work with the teams just to say they need a week of training, they need a month of training, they need this is how their skill set lies. Whereas something like our role, we're hiring in design technology, it has a little bit more weight on their Revit assessment because they're going to be supporting full studios, and we'll have to have a better of an understanding of what that means in terms of it.
So
But we haven't
with
got
that
to
being
like,
said, is it catered? Right? Like would you
yep.
obviously you probably want to give somebody on your team a completely different test that somebody's that's going to be doing, I don't know, a residential designer, you know,
Yes.
or
Oh yeah.
whatever it might be.
Yeah, we have varying levels, which I think is pretty standard. We use Knowledge Smart. I don't know. I'd be
Okay.
curious to know if other people are using other things, but it's varying on the level that they're hiring for. So a junior technologist would get a pretty fundamental Revit test, whereas a design technology specialist, so our studio BIM managers, they get an advanced test that's been curated so that we can understand like the complexities of what they understand within Revit. Not necessarily on how are you going to detail this, but something on do you had a massing element and you needed to fix it? What would you do in this situation? Something like that.
So would your like designers get a different test than your construction administrators?
Our construction administrators, I don't think get a Revit test
Okay.
at this time, to
At
be
this point,
honest.
noted. Noted.
In the
So is
future,
it
yes.
broken though? You have separate teams that kind of
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah, for sure. And different disciplines, like we have all disciplines in our studio, so mechanical is separate from structural and vice versa, because how they use a program is completely different, right?
Totally right. Christina?
Well, this is a very timely conversation for me. So, yeah, I
She's
mean,
like taking notes. I love it.
yeah, I actually am. It's on an old envelope, but I am taking notes. I'm forever a note taker. I can't help it.
Yeah,
I am too.
me
I am
too.
totally a note taker. Like
Yeah.
I have notes upon notes upon notes. That's just like one page of many.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, it's so funny that we're like
Yeah.
technology people and we still I have stickies on my computer too.
good stuff. It's good
Alex
stuff.
is
Sticky
I love
notes
shaking
it.
his head.
Notion. So I,
Yeah, he's like, I use the I don't know, like those like crazy like note forming bubble. Yeah, yeah, I can
Yeah.
see your face already. Okay. Christina.
So we actually just had a phone call last week with a vendor that does Knowledge Smart, and we were looking into it just because and I say we, it's like me and this mouse in my pocket.
Mhm.
But you know, we're getting to the point where I can't like assess everybody individually and stay on top of that with this many people being a team of one, which, you know, traditionally that's what I've always done. I've always trained my own people, except for like I think our initial Revit
You're
training
in
was
the
done by
office,
a vendor.
right?
Yeah,
You guys aren't virtual.
no, we're not virtual. So
Which I think makes that a
um
little bit easier in terms of trying, you know, in a smaller firm setting, trying to understand, you know, and people's, you know, you have your neighbor, you have the ability to say, how would you model this? You know, I think
yeah,
those types of things make it a little bit more transparent, a little easier in terms of sharing the wealth of knowledge, right? And
yeah.
going up
Well,
to your desk and asking you questions.
yeah. Well, and to go back to what you were saying about hiring, you know, I can't remember the last time that we hired someone that didn't have some knowledge of Revit, that hasn't touched it in some way. Most of the students that we hire right out of school, or like our recent grads, they're all very familiar with Rhino, which is great because we're trying to get more into that. So they're bringing that to the office and helping us learn more about how we can be using Rhino. And in turn, we're helping them learn more about how Revit is used in
Well, now there's Rhino
documentation.
inside Revit,
Yeah,
right? So there's
exactly.
like that huge bridge that allows you to utilize all that data, which is just fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. And I think the big thing for me is like, you know, most of our recent grads are comfortable with basic modeling in Revit. They know what I call school Revit, and it's, you know, you can model, you feel pretty comfortable with all of those things. You might get into the massing tools a little bit to work it kind of like Rhino, but a lot of them haven't gone through a project and documented and used that side of Revit. And so,
Random
I,
question.
yeah,
Being in Nashville, do you guys tend to hire from a specific university? Like we have a lot of
no,
people from Virginia Tech, you know,
yeah.
within our DC office, you know, for fire protection, we have a lot of people from Maryland, you know,
Um,
like it just kind of happens
we
that way.
We definitely go to schools that we have a lot of alumni from. And that's, you know, I think career fairs are starting soon, and we're going to like Virginia Tech, we're going to UT, we're going out to Austin. I think we
We
have a list
bridge
of,
out.
I think we have 12 schools
That's
that we
awesome.
are,
Well, and I guess my main question is just because, you know, sometimes at one school they might have a program that's more geared towards like implementing Revit and construction documentation
Mhm.
approaches within Revit, whereas some schools are like, no, we want it watercolored. You know, I don't know whether they're still doing that. Who knows? Like,
yeah.
hope not. But
We also take on a lot of, we do summer internships, and we have co-ops. I have a group of co-ops with us now who are going to be here for 8 months, and so that's really great. They get really immersed into studio culture and they really learn how we do our jobs, and I think they probably leave with
what does
the
that even look
best
like?
picture.
A
There,
co-op.
we have specific schools that we work with, and they come. They're paid like anybody else. They sit with the studios. They get handed anything that we would hand to anybody else in our
That's
office, which is pretty cool.
great.
Yeah.
Most people I feel like graduate from architecture and they're like they have no idea what studio culture is like or like what they're actually going to be doing in like bathroom detailing all day, you know.
So work experience isn't kind of like required in America. In Australia, in between undergrad and masters, you do a year of work experience. So for my school, I
It's
did
encouraged,
undergrad.
pretty common for you to take a summer abroad, you know,
Mm.
go to is that common in Canada for you to, you know, go to Europe, I didn't. I couldn't afford that shit.
Yeah,
I
I
needed to
have
work and make money, so I took an
it's
internship.
it's more common for engineering,
Okay. To
um,
study abroad?
or
Because
like just
architect,
do a co-op term.
okay. To like to
Not
intern,
mandatory though. Yeah, yeah.
to intern. Because yeah, I mean, you know, Europe obviously has all of these wonderful things for studying architects to see. So what
Yeah.
was your experience like, Alex?
Yeah, so for me, or I guess for the program I did, you did a 3-year undergraduate,
And that was in
and then
Australia.
yeah,
Okay.
and then after you graduate from your bachelor's, you have to work. I think it's like 6 or 8 months before you can apply for masters. But what that really means is everybody works for like 8 months and saves up all this money because, you know, no one has money when you're at uni. And then everyone just goes traveling. So the first 8 months, everyone is kind of working, getting real world experience, drawing bathroom tiles and stairs, and some set down drawings, which is what everyone does when they first graduate.
Yeah.
And then you get to travel. And so you kind of, it's really good for two reasons. One, you get this real world experience, you get to be in studio, you get to kind of understand what it's really like. And then you get to go travel around the world and just, and meet all your friends over there. So that's kind of one of the other fun things is that everybody from your year is over there doing the same thing. So I wasn't studying over there. I just kind of backpacked around and saw all these, inspiring buildings. And you definitely, there is kind of something that gets lost in pictures. I think, architecture is definitely a three-dimensional art form. And so seeing some of
Gaudi
those,
in person was
yeah,
nothing like I anticipated it to be.
the same. And like for me, it was like the inside of Notre Dame. Like when I saw like, pictures and they're like, yeah, it was this whole, back then there wasn't a lot of light and the light coming through the stained glass and like illuminating the space. And like a picture doesn't really tell that story until you're in there and you can kind of see like I don't even know how to just, you can't really describe it, I guess is the point. And so, yeah, so then you do that and then you come back and you kind of start your masters and don't sleep for 2 years. So yeah,
Do you
like
have
that's kind of
VR
something
goggles? I feel like you're a type of person that would have like an Oculus or something of the like.
I have had them, but I never use them. I get VR sickness really badly.
Oh,
And
okay.
the
And
new
that's
ones
like
are
a
pretty
legit
good.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but
But the reason I
yeah,
ask is because I really want to get them. I looked into it and the price is insane still. Like it's absurd how expensive these things are. And you don't want to just like get the cheap one,
Yeah.
like the
yeah,
low brand one. Anyway,
yeah.
you can pretty much go anywhere in Google Maps
Yeah.
and like walk around in
Yeah.
the world. And I wonder if that's like at least like a nice mediary approach to, I mean, imagine in art history class if you're in a VR goggles and like, yeah, let's walk around the Louvre.
The last firm I worked at, when work from home started, to kind of keep that collaborative studio culture, they sent out, they purchased hundreds of Oculus Rifts, and they sent them out to allow people to, have collaborative work environments, get the partners in there, mark up drawings, fly around. Some clients were really into it as well, and so they'd have client meetings in there. So it's definitely, I think, with work from home, like the VR kind of collaboration is definitely on the rise.
Well, so and what do you feel like where's BIM going? Where are you kind of passionate in terms of, the approach with people that you're trying to take? What I always try to say, like, I always try to plant the seed of computation, just try to people think more in like the data driven approach, and how we can use that data that's in the model. I just started working with electrical engineers and they create these incredibly detailed riser diagrams. And luckily they have, detail items and they put in all this wonderful information about voltage and connections and all this stuff, right? And so essentially we've created a workflow that just reads all these detail items and then places the three-dimensional element within the model. You're already putting in all of this information. Don't do it twice, right? Like let the computer do it for you. The data is there. Like, Megan is saying, data is there and there's so much that we can do with it. We just need to understand what data you need.
As far as where we see them going at our firm, I mean, I think in the past couple of years, we've focused on a few key things. We've focused on being more efficient. So the automation computation side of things for us right now, we're looking at what processes we can automate within our workflow to be as efficient as possible so we can spend more time designing and we can spend more time with our clients and we can, honestly, the schedules are getting shorter, so we've got to make sure that we're delivering the same end product to our clients and making sure that we have all of the information in there. I think number two, immersive experiences, and you guys were just talking about VR. I think we have ramped up our use of real-time rendering and any kind of immersive VR that we can. I think,
amazing.
Yeah, it's a game changer, and I think the client buy-in once you put them in a headset or they experience a real-time rendering walkthrough, the conversation is different than looking at plans and elevations. And so I think we're seeing, a huge change in how we work utilizing that tool specifically. And then I think for us on the Horizon analysis and being able, a big arm of our firm is sustainability. And a lot of times we're doing that in spreadsheets and we're doing that in other places, but we want to be doing that as much as we can in our models, because that's really where we're going to, I think, have the most impact.
What does that look like in terms of sustainability?
I think we're still trying to figure that out. Of course, I think Rhino right now has more tools in the toolkit for us. And I know
For analysis specifically.
yeah. And I know Megan's crew at Dialogue has been doing a lot with that. They've been doing some really cool things. But I think the more that we see Rhino being used, we'll see more of those analysis tools. We use BIM 360 Insight, and I gotta say, like, it's great if you get it into the project early enough to give you general direction, but a lot of times we are moving too quickly in concept phase for that to really do us much good. So
I agree. We use another one called like the one-click LCA, but we're finding unless the models are modeled properly with proper elements tagged, they're actually not really gaining value from using the tool, and they still have to revert back to their manual calculations because a paint wasn't labeled correctly to get those VOC components, or so it's kind of information in equals information out. Unless it's done up front in the Revit model, then as much as we're trying to push the sustainability component into our models, it comes down to the timeline and fees. Well, we don't have time to go back and change everything, so now we're just going to manually input this information. So there definitely needs, I think, personally, just to be a little bit more understanding of all of the teams who are going to be utilizing the model, just so that they're aware of, oh, you know what, maybe me just duplicating material 1 and having a 2 next to it isn't going to be beneficial because we don't know what that is. So just making the project teams aware of like what can actually come out of the models is huge for us right now.
Yeah, I think those 2 points where Christina was absolutely spot on. Like, especially, I mean, firstly, Enscape got acquired by V-Ray not that long ago. So I'm super excited, hopefully, to see what's going to come out of that. Obviously, V-Ray is like the standard for real amazing quality rendering. They can pull some of those tools into Enscape and make their real-time engine amazing. That will be great. Then there's also NVIDIA's Omniverse, which looks pretty amazing, linking in models, remapping materials, kind of that Unreal workflow, like Unreal Engine workflow without the full-time, well, I mean, you still need full-time game developers, but just amazing ray tracing in real time, like a lot of the RTX stuff. If you're a video game player or graphics card nerd, you'll know about the real-time engine and rendering there is phenomenal. And the backside of that is that, I mean, there's kind of two. It's kind of a double-edged sword. One is with the new Unreal Engine, they're saying you can have unlimited polygons. The good thing about that is unlimited polygons. The bad thing about that is unlimited polygons. To Megan's point, efficiency of modeling is not something that happens early on in the process, which can lead to kind of issues down the line. And if Unreal Engine 6 has unlimited polygons, it means people are going to just model worse and more sloppy. So that's kind of double-edged, but it's definitely exciting in terms of things like
Media
cityscapes.
entertainment is awesome, right?
Totally. Yeah, totally. So the new Mandalorian's going to be sick, so that'll be exciting. Yeah, and then also the environment stuff, 2030 is not that far around the corner at this point. And,
so crazy that it isn't, right?
Yeah, and so a lot of the things that I've been having in initial conversations at my new position have been about kind of more systematic ways of measuring carbon in the building, and I knew that was a focus of the last firm I was at as well. So it's definitely kind of utilizing those model elements. But to Megan's point, and also to one of my earlier points, it's about the people. Like, you need to upskill your staff to get them to be able to utilize things and kind of make the right decisions early on when they're modeling, so that you can get realistic data out. Because as someone who was used to work in a lot of competitions and one day miscalculated areas that were presented to the client, you only have to make that mistake once to realize,
especially in New York when it's runnable area. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't. Project managers don't like that. So
yeah.
So that's the same thing. If you mislabel a paint, or something is mistagged or has the wrong material, then it's really going to start to blow stuff up, which could have pretty bad implications down the line.
Christina, what is typically your approach in terms of onboarding?
We do an onboarding, and not just for Revit, for other things as well, just normal office things. But our Revit training in the past has been pretty customized per person. You know, I spent a lot of time with that person figuring out what they already know, and then kind of offering training in modules in small chunks so that as they're working, you know, I might be spending a couple hours doing Revit training, but then I'm at their desk later that day working on them understanding how to build a stair correctly in the project that they're working on. It's fairly immersive, and I'm continuing to do that. And I think this is the year that we might be changing that and doing a little bit more of a knowledge smart plus a standardized training with, you know, once what comes out of that test, kind of similar to what Megan was talking about, because I just think I don't have as much time to really do that. You know, I feel like I'm doing it a little bit of a disservice if I'm not spending a lot of time when somebody's first there and it's just one man band over here. So I think to really do it right, we're gonna have to switch gears a little bit this year.
And I think that's, yeah, I mean, it's kind of the two parts, right? It's onboarding and trying to understand where people are within their BIM, you know, knowledge and scope. And then also understanding what kind of training they need, but then also the continuing education, right? As Revit 2023 comes out, or new tools are developed, or workflows are released, or documentation, or whatever it might be. What does that look like? How do you guys share information? How do you guys think it's best to be done, even if it's not necessarily being implemented currently at your firm?
I usually give all of those, and you know, over the past couple of years, we've done them virtually just because cramming 60 people into a 100-person auditorium is maybe not the best idea right now. So, but you know, I mean, before the pandemic, we would
giving a virtual option, right?
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like maybe 20 people can come, but the rest of you guys from home or whatever, right?
Yeah. And so, I mean, we still do those in-house a couple times a year. I pair up with our quality assurance director, and we'll do one on stairs where we actually go through like stair codes and architectural things about stairs, but then also how to utilize the BIM tools to make those stairs. And we've found that kind of approach has been really great because they're seeing the application and understanding why it's important to use the tool a certain way. And that way, you know, you're learning both things together. I feel like it sticks a little bit better.
That's something that I found as a teacher, that especially in the type of architectural or engineering approaches that you're giving, if your examples don't necessarily align with like the code or the way it's actually done, if you're just getting in there and playing with the stair and being like, look at all these fun things they can do, it's like, well, I'm never going to do that. Like, how about we talk about the core stair, or even the, you know, nice fun stair in the lobby that, you know, we're going to be doing. But, you know, like a practical, like maybe just in time approach to training, I think is super important. Sitting with people within their Revit models and understanding, okay, you need to model a stair. Let's sit down, talk about your stair. You need to, like Alex was saying, you need to model a facade. Let's talk through that facade and how it's actually going to be built, how we can modify it easily in the future when the designer makes a complete change, right? And model and document it easily, right? I think there's all of these types of things that you start to have to ask yourself, specifically when you have a project that maybe when you're just demonstrating a tool don't necessarily seem as important.
I think the project based learning is really, you know, at the end of the day where most of it happens, because the amount of times where, you know, you prepare this great presentation, for example, for stairs, on how to model stairs and handrails and the different types, like monolith versus component stair and all the different things, and then a week later someone's like, oh, I need to model a stair. You know, like people, especially, you know, in teams, are always kind of pushed by deadlines and they feel like they
Mm-hmm.
don't have time to kind of further their own learning until they're on the job, and then they kind of need to know it, which can be a little frustrating. And I know in our role where we make these presentations, but kind of like you said, it's really like once you have to solve the problem for the project when they need it, because you know, there are other factors that limit their capacity to go to your training, you know, which is
Mm-hmm.
virtual is always great because then it's recorded, but even still, you know, or it's like, you know, sometimes you might find it if you just send them to a kind of standardized stair tutorial, and
Mm-hmm.
then that isn't really the design intent or something like that. It's not really going to be useful. There's a lot of nuance, especially in like specific aesthetics of different firms that, you know, if you jumped on YouTube right now and Googled Revit stair, 90% of those handrails are useless. Like they're useless. No one,
Definitely not
we're not
compliant
in
Yeah.
with
18th
those.
century
Yeah.
England. No one is turning wooden posts and extruding things down the edge of their stairs. Okay, like
Yeah.
What you said is my favorite part of the job. It's the hands-on project base, like
Mhm.
touching base with people. That's my favorite
Mhm.
part of the job.
I
So
think that was what was so hard for me as working as a consultant, even though you do get to sit with people and work through their problems, and usually they're like waiting for you to show up because they have this problem they can't solve. But being
Mhm.
at a firm and being able to like build these relationships and see it through, I think is just so important. And being really
Mhm.
in touch with, the ends to the means, like we're talking about. So, Megan,
Mhm.
how would you say your firm, you obviously use the Knowledge Smart. Is that something that you guys do continuously throughout the course of someone's career?
Not really. We're very similar in the sense that we try and do it like per project, per user need. We have them reach out to us. I don't know if you guys have this common phrase, but when they reach out to us, they're like, something's not working. So you get on a call with them. And you're like, hey, try and do it again. And they're like, oh, it's weird.
It's
It's
working.
working now. And
Yeah.
you're like,
Mm-hmm.
that's what we do. We just have to be
Yeah.
there. It's our presence that fixes
Yep.
for you.
Rabbit behaves when I'm
Yeah.
around. That's usually what I
They're
say.
like, yeah, and I'm like, that's just what we do. And they're like, we're so sorry for calling you. And I'm like, no, it's
Yeah.
good. So we're checking in. And I find those moments where we can be like, how's things going? How is your project going? And they're no longer flustered with that, then we can kind of hone in on some of those. But
Mhm.
we've also had like to a T what Alex said is we can provide all this training that's if it's not relevant to them at their current project status, goes in 1 year and out the next. And that was the feedback that we got for them. They're like, this is cool. You have these Revit series, but I'm not doing scheduling right now. I'm detailing stairs. So what you're saying is cool, but I'm not going to comprehend it. So luckily we can record most things now and refer them back to it. But again, if it's not direct to their project requirements, it's sometimes still a bit too generalized. So I think it's just working with project teams and understanding. I mean, and we have different sectors too. Lots how healthcare does something is different than residential. Even now we're on the stair topic, their stairs are completely different, how they handle rooms. So I think it's just understanding what people are working on and the projects themselves, helping them with that.
At Smith Group, we do not test at all, not in the onboarding process or throughout the duration of someone's career at Smith Group.
Mm-hmm.
Our onboarding process, I actually, of course, like you guys are saying, it implements all kinds of things like how to do your timesheet, how to, all of the things that you need to know to be a Smith Group employee. One of the things that I implemented as part of the BIM team was essentially creating a handout that people can take from the
Mm-hmm.
orientation, right? Because it's like, yeah, they just came out of the meeting about doing their timesheet, and now you're throwing stuff about BIM 360 at them, right? Like they're not going to remember that when they need to use it.
Yeah.
So essentially, when we weren't virtual, it was a PDF with clickable links and all that good stuff. Now it's actually become a Mural, which I don't know whether your firms utilize Mural. Great platform that we use internally as well as with our clients. I think it might have been mentioned actually. But that essentially, once again, just like the PDF has clickable links, and it's just much more powerful than a PowerPoint. It's a takeaway. They can use it as a bookmark. We can lock things down, etc. Update it as we need to, and they can go and reference it as they need, right? It becomes
Mhm.
a resource where it's like, what? She said something about keynoting. We go back to that, right? And so
Mhm.
they can, kind of piece it back together. We try to provide all of our resources on a technology hub on SharePoint. So whether it's a recording, an article, whatever it might be, it's a searchable platform that you can look for things. And we also have a channel on Teams, one that's a forum where anytime we create anything, um, an article on the Technology Hub, I certify a Dynamo script. There's a new like Oculus, like whatever it might
Mhm.
be. We post things on there about what's like cool in technology and what's the latest happenings at Smith Group. Then the sister page to that, or sibling page to that, would be the help desk. So they can come there to ask questions like, "Hey, I can't get this BIM 360 project to open," or
Mhm.
how do I add myself to a project, or whatever. My microphone isn't working,
Mhm.
right? Um, so kind of two parts, of course, because Smith Group is a much larger firm. And we, of course, have emails and they can reach it out to us directly, all of the different ways. But I think it's the leading the horse to water approach, I think, that is really important in terms of letting them find the resources when they need them.
Mhm.
Like you guys are saying, I could sit here and I could talk about all the awesome Dynamo workflows that we have available, but until you need to use it, you're probably not going to really be able to process how to actually go by step how to get that to work within your project. So I always say a workflow is nothing without documentation,
Mhm.
right? Creation of the workflow is actually kind of like the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
The documentation part, whether that's written or a video, which I tend to stick to written because they're easier to edit, right? You have to re-record when it comes
Yeah.
down to it. It's much harder to edit.
I don't know. You guys have maybe made me rethink this whole standardized training situation. I feel like
Mhm.
initial training might be like a lets you know what you don't know kind of situation, and then you at
Mhm.
least can refer back to that. But I think what I've learned today is I need to think more about this.
Mhm.
We offer a 3-day training course through Imagine It that's catered to our template and all of that. And I say that we say that it's linked in the orientation mural.
Mhm.
And in addition to all of the BIM courses that we have available, including my Dynamo certified class on how to use Dynamo Player and get all of our scripts to work. Not all of them, but the
Mhm.
methodology behind it. Plant that computational seed.
Yeah.
Um, we also, have that piece there that, if you feel you would benefit from a 3-day training course, let HR or somebody know and we can get you scheduled for that. But we don't mandate it.
Mhm.
We might suggest to people that they might benefit from it, especially
Mhm.
if somebody comes in to orientation and like, nope, I've been using ArchiCAD for the last 10
Yeah.
years.
I was going to say to you, Christina, don't let it defer you. Like, I agree with the one-on-one customized project training,
Yes.
but Knowledge Smart, having like Pinnacle series provide customized training paths for the users, hugely beneficial. So you can still, like, if your time is being so driven towards other things and you're like, I don't know if I can do this by myself, definitely lead on it. And then I think you can still follow up and still have that connection. It's just a matter of like being like, was this effective for you? And just a little bit of a different approach. But I personally still think it's has huge value.
Yeah, and I mean, I was thinking about it like they'll at least know the basics, and I can teach them how we utilize the tools differently. I
Exactly.
mean, I
Yeah.
think that that's a big part of it that I do anyway, but that's my touch point at that point. So,
Mm-hmm.
The other thing about Pinnacle is you can also record and make your own
Mm-hmm.
pathways.
Like
So
build your own
maybe down the
documentation
line
in there.
after yeah, exactly. If you like if you find you're doing the same presentation over and over again of specific things, then you could add that to the pathway so they get a little more. And then like Megan
Mm-hmm.
said,
We also
they
have
just check in.
LinkedIn learning
Mm-hmm.
available to people. So even in innovations, like in our learning portal,
Yeah.
when they search for something, it will actually come up with stuff from LinkedIn.
Mhm.
So that's
Just send
pretty
him the
nice.
Paul Robbins series and be done. Call it a
Basically
day,
is
right?
what happens.
Totally.
Yes, yep.
So that's basically what happens.
So
Well, I would like to end with I always find that people within the BIM world do really cool things in their free time. So I want, just as a final closeout,
Mhm.
tell me a little bit about what you enjoy to do in your free time. Christina?
Lately I have been getting into Procreate on my iPad. So, like BIM is very technical, analytical. And so, I've been creating at least one thing every week in Procreate. I use my pencil and like you can use a bunch of different like brush types, and it's kind of like Photoshop, but it's really more for like I don't know,
It's
a
a free app.
hands-on. It's $10. It's not
Okay.
expensive on the iPad, but that's been my thing lately. I mean, I feel like I'm inside all the time, and so I was like, I gotta do something creative with my time. So
See that, and that's what I
doing.
mean. That's
Yeah.
what I mean. Usually people within the BIM world are doing really cool things. You also have an adorable dog.
Yes, I do. He's not in here right now, or he'd be on camera. But
yeah.
yeah, we're getting ready to start doing like advanced obedience training. We have maybe
Oh,
kind of the obstacle course kind of stuff. So
Nice.
yeah.
It's
cool.
awesome. Megan, how about you?
That's
What do you
awesome.
like to do in your free time up there in the freezing cold weather?
Yeah.
Or
Well,
what in the summertime?
well, the whole 2 weeks
We're
that we get
inside.
of it. Yeah. I will say that in the freezing cold, I do have a dog too. And because it's been so cold today, I don't know if you can see it, he got his own snow goggles.
Oh,
So
oh
if you can see him,
you gotta get him boots. You gotta
yeah,
get him the little snow boots.
yeah.
Oh my God, I love
So
that.
he's not a fan of them. We're testing him out. So but he's what I hang out with a lot. And then I'm an avid home renovator. I have a brand new house and my parents are like, "Yay, you don't have to renovate it," but I constantly have to. Like, well, it's
So,
like a new home is like boring. It's
yeah,
all white walls are great. Like
yeah.
this is what my house looks
You gotta
like
make
behind
it
me.
your own, right?
Yeah. So like adding cool shelves, or I'm doing like a feature wall behind my TV and building a mantle and stuff.
Nice.
So yeah, that's what I do in my free time.
And finally, Alex.
Well, I moved halfway around the world, so there's that.
There is
Um,
that.
apart from that,
Have you seen a koala since you've been there, or any other
yeah,
cool?
one picked me up from the. I rode a kangaroo home from the airport, so you know. Um, apart from that, I like make animations. I made a video clip for one of my friend's songs over Christmas that was kind of fun.
Cool.
And then kind of the same, my sister just bought a new house, so we're going to have to, there's a bit of renovation that needs to be done on that, some tiling that I'll reach out to you guys, now I know you're experts.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so just that. I think, like Christina said, I think like sometimes our jobs are a little bit less creative, but we all kind of started as architects. So it's fun to have like a little outlet to just do something for yourself and
That's
not put
exactly
out.
it. And that's exactly what I found is that everybody within the BIM world does something creative. Thank you all so much, my dear friends. I really do appreciate you, not just my peers and colleagues within the BIM world, but I really do appreciate you guys taking the time.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks,
thanks for having
Gina.
us.
It's good to
And
see
thank you
everybody.
all, of course, for listening in to Dynamo BIM.